March 31st, 1932. I'm Indy Nidell, and welcome to the Weimar Wire, now quarterly coverage of what's going on in and around Germany. There is one top story in Germany this winter, and nothing else even comes really close: the presidential elections. Wow. They're held now in March, and they feature current President Paul von Hindenburg versus the Nazi Party leader Adolf Hitler. What everyone involved in politics, and a lot of those not involved in politics, is talking about as 1932 gets going is the upcoming presidential election. President Paul von Hindenburg is slated to leave office in May, but will he stand for another term? He's 84 years old and tells Chancellor Heinrich Brüning already January 5th he's not interested in fighting another grueling campaign. Brüning says that an election could be avoided altogether if they can amend the Constitution to prolong Hindenburg's current term. That would be Article 3 that would need amending. And it would take 2/3 of the Reichstag, the parliament, voting for it to make it happen. Hindenburg says that's the best solution. Thing is, getting that supermajority would require votes from the right-wing DNVP, the National People's Party, and the extremist NSDAP, the Nazi Party, who together have an awful lot of seats in the Reichstag. On January 7th, Brüning says to Nazi Party leader Adolf Hitler that if Hitler and the Nazis would support a one-year extension to Hindenburg's term, Hindenburg will not stand in the way of Hitler's road to the chancellorship. Here's where it gets tricky. Hitler demands that the Reichstag be dissolved and new national elections be held. DNVP leader Alfred Hugenberg also opposes an extension of Hindenburg's term. Also, on the 12th of January, Hitler informed Brüning by letter that despite his own great personal respect for the Reich president, he had decided to reject extension of his office due to constitutional concerns, making it clear that he thought it was Brüning who would pressurize the president to violate the Constitution. Hitler's real reason for not postponing the presidential election was that he was contemplating running for the office himself. To run for the office, Hitler needed first to become a German citizen. He had renounced his Austrian citizenship in 1925 and was classed in legal terms as stateless. But due to a German legal technicality, an appointment to a government post, either at Reich or state level, brought with it automatic entitlement to German citizenship. So all this time, Hitler has not been a German citizen, but he wants to run for office. He'll have to be appointed to some government post first, though, and as if you could not guess, this happens. Dietrich Klages is the Minister of the Interior for the State of Brunswick. He represents the Nazi Party. And on February 25th, he appoints Hitler the state's consul in Berlin, and also to the government council in the Office of State Culture and Measurement. So Hitler becomes a German citizen and is eligible to stand for public office. He does not want just any public office, as I said, he wants to be president of Germany. But a presidential campaign takes big bucks to run, or mega marks to run. So he needs some real support from big business, right? Already in January, a month before he becomes a German citizen, he gives a speech before the Industry Club at the Park Hotel in Düsseldorf. This is in the heart of the Ruhr, the big industrial region. There are about 800 or so people here, and Hitler has been invited to speak by steel magnate Fritz Thyssen. Thyssen has been a supporter of Hitler and the Nazis for quite a while now, but most of the major industrialists have been leery about giving any financial support to the Nazi Party because of the anti-capitalist agitation and commentary by members of the party. Remember, in 1930, there was a split in the Nazi Party between Hitler and his guys and Gregor Strasser, his brother, and their gang. Strasser had pretty strong socialist leanings, and he and his brother's daily Berlin paper, Nationaler Sozialist, was not only more popular than Joseph Goebbels' papers, it was full of anti-capitalist stuff and social reform and all that sort of stuff. And after the split, Hitler has really distanced himself from Strasser's brand of National Socialism, which is the socialist wing of the party. He openly repudiated Strasser in April 1930 and made Goebbels Nazi Party propaganda chief, which got the evening edition of Strasser's paper banned. All that is less than 2 years in the past, though, so Hitler has his work cut out for him, convincing the titans of industry that they have nothing to fear from him. Hitler told his listeners in Düsseldorf that any political system which subjected the talented few in business to the will of the majority, could not be called the rule of the people. A nation, he argued, must be ruled by the ablest men, and business people were among that group. Private property could be justified morally and ethically on the grounds that the economic achievements of individuals were not equal. In fact, Hitler felt the principle of inequality that prevailed in business should be extended to politics. The crisis Germany was currently enduring, he went on, stemmed not only from external causes, but from the internal political collapse of Parliament. Emergency decrees issued by Brüning could not avert economic catastrophe. Only a strong power state could create for business the conditions for future prosperity. What was required was a new mental outlook, which was only to be found in National Socialism, which stood for nationalism and strong leadership, and repudiated internationalism and democracy, promising in its place a state built on the principles of responsibility, command, and obedience. Hitler does a really good job here, promising also that he will destroy the communist menace should he come to power, but in the main, assuring those there that free enterprise will be a cornerstone of his government. Heck, they can be partners in the Nazi future. This event really raises Hitler's stature in business circles. Side note, I should also point out that a side effect of Brüning asking Hitler and Hindenburg to go along with changing the constitution and extending Hindenburg's term means Hitler gets to claim to the German people that he's defending the Constitution, and that also appeals to people. But what's going on with Brüning this winter? While things are on the up and up for Hitler in January and February, they are not at all for Heinrich Brüning. His general popularity continues to tank, and Hindenburg's behind-the-scenes advisor Kurt von Schleicher continues to question Brüning's competence to the president. Brüning, if you'll remember from last time, is now also foreign minister, though, and so some form of a foreign affairs triumph might really help his standing, at least for the time being. Now, in Geneva, beginning February 1st, is the Conference for the Reduction and Limitation of Armaments, and if Brüning can push through the German demand for international parity, which would allow German rearmament, well, that would be a feather in Brüning's cap. So he's there, and on February 6th, he presses his case. The French object, of course, saying that this is just a not-so-subtle attempt to evade the limitations imposed by the Treaty of Versailles. And this is followed by deadlock negotiations, with Brüning then returning to Germany empty-handed. Then on the 26th in the Reichstag, the Nazis and the DNVP try to bring Brüning's government down with yet another vote of no confidence, which he survives 289 to 264. It is the Social Democrats who have once again kept Brüning in power. We saw that last October, the Reichstag was adjourned until February, and it convenes February 23rd to nail down the dates for the 2 rounds of the presidential election. Round 1 is to be March 13th, and a runoff round 2, if necessary, April 10th. Joseph Goebbels speaks out in the chamber, calling Hindenburg the candidate of the Social Democrats, and calling the Social Democrats the party of deserters from the Great War, which is interesting since Hindenburg is Germany's biggest hero from that war. This provokes the desired outrage. Goebbels is also quick to point out Hindenburg is in his mid-80s and Hitler is 43. And it must be said that while Hindenburg is a hero, his reputation is not unstained. Despite the great popularity that he enjoys, there are still some black marks. For instance, wasn't the victory at the Battle of Tannenberg actually down to Ludendorff? And on the 10th of November 1918, an unforgivable act in the eyes of many monarchists, didn't Hindenburg urgently advise Kaiser Wilhelm II to flee ignominiously to Holland? And don't the field marshal's much lauded constancy and straightforwardness have their limits when it comes to protecting his own reputation? Hardly anyone in Germany batted an eyelid when, on the occasion of Hindenburg's 80th birthday, industrialists and wealthy landowners clubbed together to buy back his grandfather's estate in Neudeck and present it to the old man as a gift. What was thought to be in poor taste, however, was for Hindenburg to immediately sign over the property to his son Oscar as a way of avoiding inheritance tax. Hindenburg was persuaded to actually run again after the mayor of Berlin collected 3 million signatures to support his candidacy. He makes a national radio broadcast February 16th telling Germany it is his patriotic duty to run again and that he is the guardian of the Weimar Constitution, which is kinda not true considering that the past 2 years he spent a fair amount of time undermining it. The political parties in the center and to the left, they all decide not to run candidates against him to not split the vote. And the Social Democrats campaigned for him with the slogan, "Smash Hitler, vote Hindenburg." The Prime Minister of the state of Prussia, Otto Braun, is a Social Democrat, and he has this to say: "The presidential election, which is a crucial prelude to the Prussia state elections, will decide whether Germany's future will continue along the peaceful pathways of Republican state life, or whether the German people will have to wade through a fascist valley of misery." People are very worried about the prospect of Hitler winning. So Hindenburg's official campaign, led by the UHC, the United Hindenburg Committee, focuses on his World War I service, his charisma, and claims that he is the only person who can patch up all the divisions in German society and prevent Hitler from setting up a one-party dictatorship. Hindenburg's campaign has outspent Hitler's by 1 million or so Reichsmarks, and while a lot of Hindenburg's support has come from big business, nearly 2 million marks was secretly supplied by the Prussian Ministry of the Interior. Brüning is, of course, a tireless supporter of the president, speaking at rally after rally, while Hindenburg only makes one more radio broadcast and 2 short films. One of the films is him reading from handheld notes, and one is a montage of film clips with a voiceover listing all his achievements. The radio broadcast is March the 10th, and Hindenburg makes very clear he does not see himself as the candidate of the left, and points out that the first request for him to seek another term came from the political right. He also sort of throws Brüning under the bus, saying that some of his emergency decrees have left something to be desired. Hitler and Hindenburg are not the only 2 candidates, of course. The DNVP runs Theodor Duesterberg, who is the deputy commander of the Stahlhelm, the ultra-nationalistic veterans organization. The Nazis reveal, though, that Duesterberg's grandfather was Jewish, and this does, a bit, hurt Duesterberg, who himself is strongly anti-Semitic. The Communist Party once again runs Ernst Thälmann, which makes sense since he's their leader. Their slogan this time is, "A vote for Hindenburg is a vote for Hitler, and a vote for Hitler is a vote for war." You may wonder what Hitler's campaign is like. I shall tell you. First, though, I have to make clear, Hitler does not think he can beat Paul von Hindenburg. Hindenburg is a gargantuan German folk hero. Hitler does, however, think he can get maybe 12 million votes and come out of the elections the most popular leader of any German political party. His candidacy is announced at a Nazi party rally at the Sportspalast in Berlin to 20 solid minutes of cheering, and Joseph Goebbels runs his campaign, which is simply depicted as a struggle between National Socialism and the Weimar system. That's it. Millions of leaflets are sent out, thousands of billboards promote Hitler's message, and Goebbels even has 50,000 phonograph records of a Hitler speech given out. Hitler himself goes out on a speaking tour, and from March 1st to March 11th speaks to huge crowds in 12 cities in front of an estimated total of 500,000 people. The key theme of Hitler's speeches was the 13 wasted years of the Weimar Republic, which he defined as a time of unmitigated political and economic chaos orchestrated by the November criminals. Hitler skillfully avoided a direct attack on Hindenburg. Instead, he expressed some admiration for the old gentleman, stressing his service to the fatherland, but pointing out that he was now essentially a man of the past, who was a puppet of the Social Democrats and Republicans, and he asked him to stand aside so that we can destroy those standing behind you. In place of the current democratic chaos, Hitler promised a united national community under his strong leadership. Here's another side note. During Hitler's campaign, and for the first time, Hitler is asked several times about his views of women. When asked if he wants to deprive women of equal rights and jobs, he says that is not the case. However, he really does, in fact, want to end the equality Weimar grants women, and sees women's primary role as increasing the numbers of racially valuable births. So how does the election go? On March 13, 1932, 86.2% of the electorate goes to the polls, which is nearly 20% more than during the 1925 election. Hindenburg easily wins. However, he gets 49.54% of the vote, 18.65 million votes. And since no one gets 50% and an outright majority, there will be a runoff election. Hitler is in second place with 30.12%. He did not get 12 million votes as he hoped for, but he did get 11.3 million, which is an awful lot. Hindenburg is disappointed that he didn't win in the first round, and is even more disappointed that he actually lost to Hitler in his home state of East Prussia. Thälmann gets 13.24% of the votes, 4.98 million of them, and those three will be the candidates in the runoff. It's fairly obvious that had Hindenburg not run, Hitler would be a huge winner. The runoff is 10 days from now, on April 10th. But nobody is campaigning today, since Hindenburg has issued an emergency decree making an Easter truce on campaigning from March 20th to April 3rd. There are to be no political meetings or rallies during this period. This means that there's only going to be 1 week of campaigning before the runoff elections. Exciting times here in Germany. There's plenty of excitement internationally as well this winter. There's been trouble, well, more trouble, between Japan and China. On January 9th, a Korean nationalist tries and fails to assassinate Japanese Emperor Hirohito. Over in China, the official newspaper of the Kuomintang, China's ruling party, prints an editorial that says it's a shame the attempt didn't succeed, which Japan uses as a pretext to attack Shanghai later that month. Well, maybe pretext isn't quite how I should say it. A lot of Japanese are outraged by the editorial, and there are a lot of Japanese people living and working in Shanghai. On January 18th, 5 Japanese monks are beaten by Chinese, one of them actually beaten to death, near a factory, and the Japanese respond by burning down the factory. I should point out that Ryukichi Tanaka, a Japanese staff officer stationed in Shanghai, may well have paid those Chinese to beat the Japanese. The situation escalates very quickly, and the Japanese Navy is sent in, as well as both the Chinese and Japanese Air Forces, and the Chinese 19th Route Army joins the fray. By mid-February, the Japanese have 18,000 men there, and the Chinese send in the 5th Army. Finally, on March the 1st, the Japanese land an infantry division behind Chinese lines, and the Chinese are forced to abandon the whole Shanghai area. In mid-March, representatives from the League of Nations arrive in Shanghai to try to broker ceasefire negotiations, but as of today, nothing has been formally agreed. Remember last year, Japan staged what seems to be a false flag incident at Mukden in occupied Manchuria. Now on February 18th in Manchuria, the Japanese establish the Northeast Supreme Administrative Council, proclaiming the state of Manchuria, or Manchukuo, independent from China, and on March 1st installed Puyi, who was the last emperor of China, as puppet emperor of Manchukuo. At Lake Placid, New York, in the United States, the 1932 Winter Olympics take place from February 4th through 13th. The U.S. tops the medal count with 12, the first time they've done so at a Winter Olympics. Sonja Henie is a big star, winning her second figure skating gold. Germany sends 20 athletes, which is the third most behind the US and Canada, but only wins 2 medals, both bronzes, one in the 4-man bobsleigh and one in ice hockey. I suppose I should point out that there are only 4 countries competing in the ice hockey, and while Germany beats Poland twice, 4-0 and 4-1, we lose twice each to Canada and the US, scoring just 1 total goal and giving up 24. And on March 1st, the Lindbergh baby, the 20-month-old son of world-renowned aviator Charles Lindbergh, is kidnapped. There are no footprints or fingerprints or physical evidence like that, but there is a poorly written ransom note which reads, "Dear Sir, have $50,000 ready, $25,000 in $20 bills, $15,000 in $10 bills, and $10,000 in $5 bills. After 2 to 4 days, we will inform you where to deliver the money. We warn you for making any ding public or for notify the police the child is in gut care." A lot of the words are misspelled, and the grammar is weird, so investigators think whoever wrote it is a foreigner who hasn't spent a great deal of time in the US. There is a $25,000 reward for information leading to an arrest, and FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover tells the New Jersey police they can have all the assistance they want. Poor kid. Poor parents. Well, that is all the news I have for you this winter. And as March turns to April, we wait with bated breath to see what in the world will happen in the runoff election. Brüning seems to be ever more a political dinosaur, and Hitler, now a German, looks to ever more Germans like the man of the future. The first round of the elections has really shown how Hitler's message and popularity have grown and how Hindenburg's has dwindled somewhat. Benjamin Carter Hett points out in The Death of Democracy that Hindenburg very specifically did not want to run as the candidate of the center and the left. He wanted right-wing support. But while Duesterberg might be deputy leader of the Stahlhelm, Hindenburg is the honorary leader, and it's an organization of veterans, and Hindenburg is the granddaddy of veterans, and yet the Stahlhelm backs Duesterberg. The National Rural League also told all of its members, and it has a lot of powerful landowners among them, to back either Hitler or Duesterberg, because Hindenburg doesn't distance himself from the Social Democrats. Either of those, backing Hindenburg, would have easily given him over 50% of the vote and avoided the runoff, which is what the old and physically infirm president would have preferred. But that's not what he got. We enter April with the runoff days away, Hitler ascendant, and the country and the Constitution very much up for grabs. I wonder what will happen. Don't miss the next thrilling episode. Germany might look very different 3 months from now. And hey, join the Time Ghost Army at timeghost.tv or patreon.com so I can continue to bring you this coverage and you can see and hear history unfold before you. Do not forget to subscribe. See you next time.